Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Postgame Live, presented by my bookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with my bookie. Well, look, Monday night, it's going to be reserved for Red October, but Sunday night was all about Kelly Green. It was only fitting on the Kelly Green night that the Eagles turned back the clock and played some smash mouth football against the Miami Dolphins. And guess what? They spanked them 31-17 in a score that I don't even think was as close as that score suggests. Puts a bad taste in the mouth from the Jets' loss behind the Eagles. Make no mistake about it, Clay Harbor. This was a manhandling by the Philadelphia Eagles on both sides of the football. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're right, man. 6-1, and this defensive line just came to life there in the second half. They gave up 7 first half rushing yards. It's the fewest the Dolphins have had amassed since 2009. I mean, defensively, Sean Desai just called a heck of a game. He's got to be on some short lists for calls for head coaches next year at this point in the season to slow down this offense that was averaging 37 points a game, almost 500 yards of offense. To do what they did is just very, very impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I got so excited, I even skipped the normal introductions. I'm Geoff Mosher, of course, from Inside the Birds, and you are former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. Adam Caplan can't be with us tonight. He'll be back in our normal, regularly scheduled programming. But it's just going to be me and Clay tonight, and I'm excited to break this game down. There are just so many vantage points that we're going to take, and so many different layers that we'll get into from both offense and defense. But when the Philadelphia Eagles win, Clay, it's because they're usually better up front than the team that they're playing. Last week was a very rare week. I thought you and Greg Cosell did a great job of pointing out on your show for us, Inside the Tape, that comes out every Thursday, that the Eagles were uncharacteristically handled up front offensively. And then we know they turn the ball over in a way they don't normally turn the ball over. Tonight, the real Eagles came back. They controlled the game on the ground, and against the Dolphins offense that scores a lot of points, but as we'll get into, is also a little bit one-dimensional. I thought, as you mentioned, the big key was dominating them up front and not letting that run game. People think about the passing game. It's the run game where it starts for the Dolphins, and they didn't have one tonight, not an effective one.
Yeah, they really didn't have one. I mean, they only had 12 total carries on the entire game, and that's if you count one of Tua's runs right there. But like you said, first half, to hold a team to -7, I don't care who they are, if they're the worst rushing team in the league, to hold them in -7 yards in the NFL, when you have guys that you get paid millions of dollars to run the ball, you get paid millions of dollars to come up with schemes to run the ball, you get to look at tape, and you can only come up with -7 yards. I mean, that's very impressive. Obviously, the big boys up front, hats off to them. Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter with a heck of a game, Jordan Davis. Obviously, we got to dive into all 22, but just from looking at it tonight, those guys played well. The guys up front on both sides of the ball, obviously Lane gave up 1 sack, but overall you kept Hurts clean, and defensively you did not allow them to run the ball. And then you got pressure on what we talked about. You got pressure on Tua. You got to pressure Tua, and you can't send extra blitzers because he can get the ball out so quick. So I thought, overall, looking at this game, it started up front. You keep hearing about that with the Eagles, but I mean, as cliche as it sounds, the game's won in the trenches, and today that's where the Eagles won it.
What's our big picture view of this game? The Eagles snap out of it after losing a game. They improve now to 6-1. They have Washington up next, then Dallas, then the bye. What to you as you look at the team now? Because there was so much sort of negativity after the Jets game and a lot of surprise. And then I think because they were playing the Dolphins next, people were actually wondering, like, oh my God, is this team going to win? Oh, I'm sorry, lose 2 straight games, something they haven't done with Jalen Hurts as the starter since way back in 2021, almost 2 years to the date. Actually, they haven't lost 2 in a row. What is your big picture summation here?
Yeah, so if you guys listen to Inside the Tape, I talked about looking at the Jets game when I gave it a second watch. There's some crazy stuff that happened. I mean, you have Dallas Goedert gift wrapping an interception. You have a fumble here. Devontae Smith is dropping balls. I mean, all these guys getting hurt. To me, that was an outlier. They still won that game, but they just didn't win it with the score. Overall, they outplayed the Jets. They're a better team than the Jets. You can't watch that game and tell me that the Eagles were a better team that the Jets were a better team than the Eagles, excuse me. They just didn't win in the scoreboard. And today they came back, they fixed the turnovers, they got those boneheaded mistakes out of the way, and they played a good quality football game. Obviously, you have the Hurts interception down there and in the fumble, but overall, I thought they played really good and mistake-free football. So my overall takeaway from this game is them showing that they can beat good teams. This is a 5-1 football team. And obviously they haven't played the best competition. You start looking at their schedule, who have they beat? This team can't. Okay, you're still 5-1 in the NFL, and you have the best offense in the league, yardage-wise, the best receiver in the league, one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the league. You come in and you handle them 31-17. That's an impressive win.
Yeah. You know what, Clay? My big picture takeaway about this, looking at the Eagles and sort of thinking back on last year when they lost that game against Washington. They start off, I think, 8-0, lost against Washington, a game in which they turned the ball over 4 times.
Yeah.
Right. Came back the next week and had a tough road game against the Indianapolis Colts, who were not doing well last year, but they were in almost every game and they were fighting and clawing. And that was a tough game for the Eagles until the second half, where they started to take over the ground game and soldier themselves to a 17-16 win, if I'm not mistaken. So what I see from this Eagles team especially, and I'll credit the coaching staff for this, and the players too. I don't want to think this, I'm taking away from the players, but response to adversity.
Yeah.
When you are the Eagles and you are the hunted and you have established yourself as one of the top teams and you go out and play one of your lousiest games, not only from turnovers, but you're uncharacteristically not so strong up front against a good defensive front, you want to see what that's like the next week. You want to see if you can come back, shake that off, and if everybody is laser focused on getting their job done, from the coaches to the players. And I thought it was great that the Eagles had the Miami Dolphins up next, not a pancake type team where it would be easier to shake it off. And for them to come out and not just win but dominate, Clay, I think really showed a lot about the focus that this team has, starting with Jalen Hurts, to just eliminate adversity, eliminate what they're saying on the outside. It was a tough week. Phillies, obviously doing their thing, right?
Yeah.
Tough week for the Eagles. And they were able to just say, hey, that you just saw us at our worst. We should never be judged by our worst, but we have to go out there and make sure that we're judged on our best version of ourselves. And this might have been their most impressive victory of the year.
Yeah, this is definitely their most impressive victory of the year. And in my opinion, they still haven't played their best football. I still think their best football is in front of them. This wasn't to me a great game. I thought it was a solid game. Obviously the offense put up some points. It was good to see AJ Brown obviously continue to make these plays. Fifth consecutive game with over 125 yards. Him and Calvin Johnson, the only 2 players to ever have done that. Like, this guy is a true number 1 receiver, and he showed that today. I mean, you got Tyreek Hill on the field. You got AJ Brown. AJ Brown won that battle. You look at Tua. You look at Jalen Hurts. You look at what's going on there. You got the Alabama connection. Tua comes in for Hurts. To me, Hurts won that battle. And these guys are showing why they're 2 of the premier guys in the league at their position. But as a player, you come off a tough loss. You don't want to lose 2 in a row. You have a big team coming in. You feel a little extra pressure. You do. You're like, man, we really got to win this game. And everybody's picking the Dolphins. Not everybody, but you have a good number of people saying, hey, this defensive backfield is not going to be able to guard these guys. Who you got in the slot right now? You got Terrell Edmonds trying to guard Tyreek Hill. You got Sidney Brown in there. You got Josh Jobin there in the slot. You got a lot of guys that you're not very comfortable in. Eagles came out. They made up for it in the places they had to. The defensive line took over the game. That's what they had to do. They pressured the quarterback. I thought Slay and Bradbury played good games. We need them to come through and play good, solid games. Obviously, got to watch all 22. But for me, they had bounce back games. Yep. So you'd love to see that, and you had to pick up in some of these positions, and they did. And obviously, the offensive line held their own. The receiving core, National Tight Ends Day. Get my guy Dallas Goedert the ball in National Tight Ends Day. Don't let Travis Kelce get all the love with Taylor Swift.
Wait a minute. This was National Tight? Is that a thing? National Tight Ends Day?
It is a holiday. It's not an official holiday, but in the NFL, it's all you hear about all day. It was National Tight Ends Day today. And besides Travis Kelce, I think Dallas Goedert had the best National Tight Ends Day. And he showed why he's a top 5 tight end.
Yes. Yeah. This is all we need. Another Hallmark created holiday. When's National Podcaster Host Day? That's what I want to know. When's my day?
I don't think you got a day there, Jeff. I mean, you got to put in for that, man.
There's
But
like literally a day for everything. How can there not be a podcasting host day?
I think maybe you start it. People
Well,
follow.
that should be it. That should be the next one. I tell you what, every day should be a national holiday for people who are betting in favor of the Eagles because they would have won some money,
Yep.
especially if they did it with our friends at My Bookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you the tools to win, like My Bookie. At My Bookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use My Bookie for daily odds boosts, same game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Plus, My Bookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. So just use our promo code. It's the birds, THEBIRDS, all one word, on your first deposit and receive up to $200 in cash. That's it. That's what you just put in the birds. I can type that out in my sleep. I can type it out, not even looking, the birds, to get my own cash bonus now with My Bookie. And also, you got to try the My Bookie money bag to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds. Right now, you got plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs in the Super. I mean, like, that's two 5-1 teams right there. Plus 38,000. Are you kidding me? You are not going to find odds like that anywhere else. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with My Bookie. I want to start with the Eagles offense as we sort of peel back the onions here. For those who watch Inside the Birds pregame live, Clay, we sort of, I don't want to say we disagree. We had a really good, interesting debate on how the Eagles would go about attacking this Miami Dolphins team. There was a faction who felt like, hey, if Xavier Howard is out, right, then you go to the air because they already don't have a great secondary and that's their best player. Great time for the Eagles to really air it out. And I was part of the faction that said, I don't think the Eagles needed to bow to the Miami Dolphins, but I thought it would be in their best interest, coming off a loss, to kind of restabilize. And against a Vic Fangio defense, Clay, I thought, do what teams try to do to you. Run the ball, work the edges, work the underneath. You saw the Dolphins were trying to protect their corners, right, without Xavier by playing a lot of too deep coverages. And that's what the Eagles did. They came out from the opening drive, running the ball with DeAndre Swift. Third down, Dallas Goedert, some crossing. They had a few man beaters there, but they were basically working the ball. It was like a boxing match, right? And they were going body, body, body. And then finally in the fourth quarter, they came out with a knockout to A.J. Brown. But this, I thought, was the best course of action because it's what the Eagles do well. And a byproduct of that is that you play keep away from an offense that scores 40 points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think their first 4 plays, minus the third down they threw to Devontae Smith, were all rushes with DeAndre Swift. And I go, okay, to me, I go, okay, this is how they're doing it today. They're gonna pound the rock. And I thought that Swift had a good game, but like you said, they did start with the short passes. You saw Goddard get involved early. You saw Devontae Smith catching the mid-range passes early, and Brian Johnson. I mean, that looked like it was his game plan: short ball control type moves. And then obviously, when it happened in the moment, I'm like, what are you doing with a quarterback draw? It's third down and 6 and in goal from the 6, and you do a quarterback run. And obviously, Hurts didn't seem like, to me, that he was up to his normal speed today. I don't know what was wrong with him, but he looked like something was hurting him. And to me, I thought, being in the game, like, maybe you're calling this too conservative with this Miami Dolphins offense. And obviously the Eagles maybe caught a break here or there with a Tua drop, 2 drops that could have been touchdowns, with the one ended up coming back with the fumble return. But overall, I liked what they did. They came in with that game plan. And that's, hats off to Brian Johnson. He's been getting criticized a lot. Is he the guy? Can he bring this team back to the Super Bowl? I thought he did. He came back. They had a nice path to victory, and they followed it. And they played nice ball control football. And you saw Jalen Hurts with a very efficient day, 23 of 31. Obviously, he had the interception. There was 3 sacks, but he had 109, 110 rating. I mean, it was a great game plan. I think they executed it very well.
Yeah, and to your point, Trey, and Clay, it doesn't look pretty all the time, but they were 4 of 6 in their red zone efficiency. 4 touchdowns on 6 trips, 67%. You will take that. I mean, this is, if you look at the Eagles' offensive rankings, and this was a big part of our discussion also, Miami
Yeah.
gets all the credit because they're averaging 40 points a game, but the Eagles were right there. They were second in total yards. They were number 1 in time of possession. They were 5th in scoring, and they were number 1 in third down percentage, which to me is always the biggest stat, next to maybe turnover ratio and winning a
Yeah.
game. But the one area where they did not rank high, it was in the mid-20s, was red zone offense. So I thought it was
Yeah.
important for them to get back to that. And honestly, that call from Hurts on the first drive where he ran it up the middle, when you watch the replay, at least the TV, you saw that they had like 2-3 there was a wide open gap there. Miami did a pretty
Yeah.
good job of closing that lane on that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good play call for the defense that they were showing.
Yeah, maybe it was a play where you went up there with 2 calls, and Hurts had the ability. He
Check
decided to
into it.
go with it. So you never want to criticize before you know it, because I know so many times, through
Mhm.
my Eagles tenure and Jaguars tenure, that they're like, "What the heck was that call right there?" And I was like, "Yo, like when we see a certain look, you make that call."
Right.
And it's something that is done by the players, and you have the option to do it. So I think that could have been one of those situations where it's like, hey, if he sees the defensive alignment, you got 2-3 techniques. You don't gotta you don't got to shade, you don't got to nose, you don't got anything right up in there in the A gap. So maybe he tried to take that in his own. But
Right.
overall, I thought it was a good game plan, a game plan with that path to victory. But for me, I'm thinking you might have to score some serious points here. With
Mhm.
this team coming in, Tyreek Hill, Mosher. I thought, man, this is. I thought, maybe you'd be more aggressive, but hey, that's why they pay him the big bucks. And I'm sitting here talking about it, man. They ended up coming away with the big victory, and I liked what I saw from that offense today.
Yeah, no relation, by the way, with the Dolphins running back and me. It's he's
Yeah,
Mostert, I'm Mosher, same thing.
yeah,
Here's a big stat too that I thought was a big part of it, right? And this contributes to the Eagles having the ball for 36, almost 37 minutes of the game.
yeah.
All right. Now you look at third down, you go, 4 of 12. That's not really good. Really, it's 4 of 11 because the last third down was a kneel down, right? 4 of 11. However, we know that the Eagles treat third down like second down.
Yeah,
They're willing to run a play short of the sticks to get the tush push and the short yardage, right? If you combine
absolutely.
third down and fourth down, they are 8 for 16. Let's call it 8 for 15. That's over 50%, right? So that was one way that I thought, if you combine that, the third and fourth down percentage with what they were able to do in the red zone being 4 for 6, that just, again, it's a great example of how you beat the Dolphins. You control the clock, you control time of possession, you convert your third downs, and most of them were early on to Dallas. They were the mismatches that you thought the Eagles would have. They weren't afraid to go empty and throw it out to Goddard matched up against the linebacker. And then when you look at the personnel, you're as scary as the Dolphins might seem, and they do have some good
Yeah.
front six players, Clay. You knew that they could be had in the second level in the passing game as long as you blocked it up. And outside of Mailata having a little bit of trouble with Bradley Chubb, I thought that they blocked it up fairly well.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they did too. And Vic Fangio mixes things up again because what coming in this game, I'm like, okay, I'm really gonna try to get a beat on what the Dolphins are doing defensively early. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, okay, I'm like, okay, they're playing a lot of zone, zone coverage or blitz, zone blitz. No, now they're doing a little man. They're
Mhm.
blitzing, they're not, they're dropping. So he does a good job of trying, he's trying to disguise. I'm like, I was trying to really get a beat on, okay, what are they going to do to the Eagles, starting off. The Eagles too, Sean decided a good job of mixing it up
Yeah.
because that's something I was trying to, I'm writing notes of, what zone coverage, zone blitz, okay, quarters looks like the cover two, but I think both
Yep.
defenses mixed up a lot. They looked like they were disguising a little bit, but you saw some man, you saw some zone, you saw some zone blitz, you saw some cover one, you even saw zero, put in here or there, but overall, I thought that defensively, that Sean Desai had a heck of a game plan. I mean, and
Yeah.
especially when you started to see the pass rush there, and obviously with giving up 17 points to this team and the amount of yardage that they gave up, it was a great game plan. But I think it even goes undervalued from what you saw because when you turn the ball over, I mean
Mhm.
that's just a momentum killer, and for them to be able to turn the ball over and to give up that field goal, to me, that just set the tone for the rest of the game.
Huge. again, response to adversity that I had mentioned. That was a great example of it. You turn the ball over deep, you make a stand. That was great. I do want to get into this defense and Sean Desai and the game plan. Before we do that, we had a great Inside the Birds pregame live show. It was at a place called Fringe Bar right on 140 North Columbus Ave, right on the Delaware Ave waterfront there. Beautiful spot. Had a wonderful time. Really great host. We want to thank them for putting on a great set for us to be able to do our show there. And it was a wonderful place. The food, the drink specials. We're going to pause real quick to hear words from our friend here at our friends at Fringe Bar.
Tell me what must I do? 'Cause luckily I'm good at breathing. I wouldn't bug him and he won't stop chasing. He ain't the biggest. He ain't the biggest.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds Postgame Live. Geoff Mosher here with former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. Adam Caplan will be back with us on the next one. So we were starting to talk about the Eagles defense, and I will say, I really appreciated the difficulty that Sean Desai faced, right, being under the microscope going into this game, especially with Miami, averaging close to 40 points a game. I do feel that when Dallas Goedert catches a touchdown, right, and they go up 10-3 in the second quarter, and Miami's already been stopped once or twice, I felt like, and again, that also entailed stopping after the turnover, holding them to a field goal, that Sean Desai probably had the biggest exhale, right? Because if there's one thing we can talk about with this Miami offense, Clay, is that it's very unique. And I felt, another reason I picked the Eagles to win, I felt like if they got behind, it would be difficult for them to get back into a game, especially if they fell behind by double digits, which they did, because of the quick hit nature and 3-step drop nature of their offense. If you're behind a lot and you got to throw a lot, you're going to need to find all your weapons. You're going to need 5-step drops. You're going to need protection. And that's really not how Miami's offense operates.
Yeah, but then again, watching that tape from last week against the Panthers, they did get behind 14-0 and ended up coming back.
I forgot about that.
Bryce Young. But, I know what you're saying, because they do have that quick game nature. And then if you can start keying on that, you really start putting some pressure on them. And they don't really do that 5-step, 7-step drop. It's really a lot of quick game. And it's funny, they run a lot of these wheel routes mixed in with an in route. And you just see, Tyreek Hill coming open over the middle of the field. And obviously you saw him beat us deep when Terrell Edmonds, they had that bracket coverage right there. And Bradbury, you could tell, was frustrated because Edmonds, it's kind of like an over-under type deal. Edmonds has got to take the deep stuff, and then Bradbury's got the underneath stuff, and Edmonds just got ran past. I mean, Tyreek Hill obviously does that to people, but I was disappointed with that play. But to get back to what you're saying, I think that gives a defensive coordinator a ton of wiggle room. You can start calling things you wouldn't be calling if you were behind. So that helps, man. It's all the football. In a game like this helps greatly if you start off ahead. When you're facing an offense like the Dolphins, even like the Dolphins talking about the Eagles, if you get ahead early, it makes a huge difference because it opens up that playbook and then it shrinks it down a little bit for your opponent. So I think you make a good point there in saying, like, getting up early was a big part of this game, just because it did take out a big number of plays that the Dolphins could rely on there.
Yeah, and I should have rephrased it. I felt that if the Eagles got up by double digits, it would be tough, because the difference between them and Carolina is I thought that they're obviously a much better
Yeah,
team up
Carolina's
front.
the worst team in the NFL. You know,
Well, one of them. Yeah, maybe. I mean, they have some
Or-
good defensive players, but they're just not overall a very good team. And
yeah, they're winless.
yeah,
They're literally
yeah.
got the
Oh my
first
God, I
pick in the
forgot about
draft right now. Yeah.
they're going to need some offensive line. Well, they're going to need a lot of help. But yeah, so I thought, you've always heard the adage, some quarterbacks can be one read and go, right? If the one read's
Yeah.
not there, then they run. Okay. Tua to me is one read and oh no. If you make him, if you're able to keep them behind the sticks like the Eagles did, and it's 2nd and 8 and 3rd and 8, and you bracket Tyreek Hill and he's got to go to Waddle or somebody else, he gets a little dicey. And then even more so, the Eagles defensive line was able to really wreak havoc on a Miami offensive line that's just not that good. I mean, again,
Yeah.
that's why their offense is the way it is because the line's okay and the quarterback really needs to be in rhythm with that first read.
Well, people forget that Teron Armstead, one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL, was supposed to be on this offensive line, and he's gone. The reason they haven't been exposed is because Tua, according to Next Gen Stats and ESPN, is literally the fastest quarterback in the NFL at getting rid of the ball. So they haven't been exposed, but their offensive line is not good. You saw some of these moves, John. First off, I don't know who's blocking Josh Sweat on a couple of these pass rush moves. He's just this guy is one of the most underrated edge rushers in the league. I'm just sitting there thinking, man. Thankfully, I never had to block that guy. I've had to block some good players in my life. We used to play against D. Ware, Brian Arakpo back in their heyday, and I mean, looking at Josh Sweat and some of the moves he can make on the edge, and obviously I'm talking about edge, obviously Hassan Reddick too. But I would hate playing against the Eagles as a player going in, watching that tape. First thing I'm going to look at is these two guys. Okay, who are my edge defenders? Damn, I got to block these guys all game? Like, this ain't going to be fun. That's the first thing I'm going to look at. But, just seeing those guys, how they're able to play, and then obviously you go and you look at the defensive backs. But the way that Hassan Reddick was able to stop the run game early, I mean, you saw they couldn't run the ball to Hassan Reddick.
Why couldn't they run the ball, Clay? What did the Eagles do that made it very difficult for this number one rushing offense to get any yards? I know you have to watch the all 22, but
so the athleticism of Sweat and Reddick, Reddick, usually there's specific rules that you have to fit. You have to follow if you're a defender. And I used to hate guys like this. A guy who would never, Anthony Spencer, I think we talked about him from the Cowboys before. We've talked some of these guys, J.J. Watt, they don't have to follow the rules. You can kind of sense, okay, Reddick is on the edge. He's not going to let you get outside of him. As a blocker, you're pulling around. He's going to have to widen with you because he's got to turn it inside. Hassan Reddick's so athletic, he's just going to shoot up the field. He's got the quickness to beat you up the field and then blow up the play instead of making sure that he forces. It's a leverage game. You don't want to get out leverage. It's these minuscule movements. You'll think you're in the right position to force this guy to try to, turn him outside. And next thing you know, he shoots up the field and you can't get outside. I saw it happen 2 or 3 times with Hassan Reddick. That's a guy I don't want to block. He doesn't follow the rules. He's going to have to force you back inside. He's going to cut inside your block. And now you're left out there looking like an idiot. I'm just shaking my head for these tight ends, knowing what they're going through. I used to try that stuff too. Reddick and Sweat are guys that are athletic enough to break these rules. J.J. Watt would break these rules all the time. You think you're cutting this guy off, he's going back door, you're going to win? No. He's going to win. He's still going to somehow get through the play and make the play upfield. So, to me, Reddick and Sweat being on the edge there really stopped that outside run game that the Dolphins love to do. And obviously we got to watch a tape. But what I saw on film, showing the replays, that was a big problem. And you saw BG go in there and they were able to get around the edge. I love BG, but he's just not the type of athlete that Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are. So I think that was why they were able in the first half to stop the run so effectively.
So it starts with setting the edges, funneling the runs back inside. And then obviously guys like Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, Nick Morrow, they all did a good job. It felt like they were shooting gaps too when that happens. And they were getting right into there and being able to stop the run. Yes. And that was, and you could tell Miami was a little frustrated in it. I think they even changed up some of their run schemes in the second half to finally get Raheem Mostert. Because they went outside more and finally tried to get him a little bit more.
If Reddick gets beat and he misses that and they go outside, he's going to get chewed out. But obviously they're giving him the freedom to do stuff like that. And that's why he's so effective in certain situations like that.
Well, great example. I'm fascinated that you brought that up because the biggest play the Eagles made last year defensively was Hassan Reddick not following the rules. And it came in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers when he sacked Brock Purdy on a play action and put the guy out with an elbow. I don't know if you remember all the specifics of that play, but on that play, Deebo Samuel, prior to snap, is running an orbit motion behind Brock Purdy as the ball is snapped. Now, as a defensive end, your job, right, is to make sure that Deebo Samuel, if he gets the ball, does not beat you to the end. But Hassan Reddick said, screw it. I'm not even going to defend Deebo. And he just made a beeline for Brock Purdy, who's sitting there faking a handoff as part of the play action and turns around and says, oh my God, this guy's right in my face. Why is he not following Deebo Samuel in the orbit motion, right?
Yeah.
And then bam, he's out with the elbow injury and the Eagles are off to a huge win.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, he's just got awareness there. And, you know, I always, because I've been the tight end that's pulling, it's some sort of a counter, you could call it, when you got the tight end and a tackle pulling, and it's all about leverage and positioning. And then, you see this guy shoot inside of you, and you think, okay, the running back's got to be outside. He's shooting inside, like there's no tackle for loss. Okay, now I'm going to get chewed out, but I thought I was in good position. So the athleticism of these guys really do pay off, and especially with teams that try to run the ball in the perimeter. And then obviously you're not going to run the ball in the middle. And another thing you'll see is you look at the tape, you see Jordan Davis is just, he's not getting moved in there.
No,
and Bill Williams, and these guys are chasing down. They play with so much effort, this defensive line. And to me, that's half the battle. When you got a group of defensive line, and people talk about, Jalen Carter coming in, wasn't a guy that gave great. This guy's hustling to the whistle. Milton Williams hustling to the whistle. These guys are following plays. And the fact that they're so good, they're so stout, and they're giving that much effort, I mean, this D-line is incredible.
Yeah, you're right. Jordan Davis had 2 really nice games in a row now, and kudos to you and Greg Cosell for pointing that out on Inside the Tape. I don't think a lot of people were talking about not just how good Jordan Davis was last week against the Jets in a loss, but a great showing by the D-line, but also how he was able to stay out there and play his most snaps as a pro. I mean, he's starting to be able to play longer without getting tired. He's impossible to move. So, I mean, just by being out there, it's tough. But then now that he's getting a pass rush and now he's figuring things out, he's starting to become a very, very difficult player for opponents. And now you have to sort of draw. Last year, you didn't have to draw the red circle around him. You didn't even think he'd be on the field for 10 snaps, right? Last year, he got supplanted by a guy who was signed off the couch. All right, in Linval Joseph. This year, he's like, whoa, he's Jordan Davis, the first round pick now.
Yeah, you can see these guys. You can see why they're first round picks, man. And just to see a guy that big, and and looking at those guys and seeing how they're able to move. And then, like I said, every defensive line coach, it's all about the effort and the motor. That's huge because when you're chasing these plays, and sometimes it's hard to get these D linemen to chase these plays because maybe 1 out of 10 times they're gonna get there. But the Eagles D line is 100% bought in. I've played with D line that are giving token effort before, just enough they don't get. This team isn't giving token effort. These guys are going after the ball. They're playing for each other, and you can just tell they're like hungry dogs out there. I think I tweeted that. This D line is just a group of hungry dogs. I mean, as ridiculous as that sounds, they are just following the ball. Their pursuit is phenomenal, and then they're just not getting beat inside. You got Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat off the edge. I mean, this D line is as good as they were last year. I know obviously their numbers aren't as good with the sacks and everything. They're just as good of a defensive line.
They are. And by the way, don't you go starting a civil war inside the Eagles locker room between the offensive line and defensive line, because that hungry dogs run faster is a Jeff Stoutland offensive line motto. All right. When they won the Super Bowl in 2017, you giving that credit to the D line, you're going to make those big guys up front on offense bad. No, I'm just kidding. Let's finish it off with this, right? Because you mentioned Terrell Edmunds. He actually, I feel for him because I feel for Sean Desai, him and the entire backfield. There were times he was playing a linebacker role because he's so good. He's better against the run and not as good against coverage. And then they would play like Sidney Brown and Mekhi Garner in as safeties. So I think sometimes they were playing 3 safeties, but he was really a linebacker role. But then there were times he was playing safety. There was that, that 3rd and 8. I think Sean Desai was taking a chance. Things were going good for the Eagles. I think he wanted to speed up Tua's clock a little bit there and just sort of, if he has to throw it across the middle, we might get a pick here.
Yeah.
And Tua made a good read and found Tyreek Hill. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, Bradbury and Edmonds are not the two guys you really want trying to run with that guy. But I don't sort of blame Sean Desai for trying to seize on an opportunity at that moment while they were ahead to try to do something. It was that's far less damaging than the turnover, right? The interception that led to directly to a touchdown. Are you a little concerned about it's two more turnovers?
Yeah.
I think the first turnover, Jalen was climbing the pocket, actually, which I appreciated. He was not leaving the pocket. He climbed it, but then he got hit and lost handle of the ball. And then obviously the second one was the interception it was deflected, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it was deflected. I mean, obviously, those are such tough bang plays, and I think they come in bunches, and then you're going to go some time when you don't have them. And I think you don't see that ball getting deflected, and obviously that was a tough fumble. You got two more turnovers today, but to me, like it's the way they happen, and I don't think that's something that was this huge mistake. To me, it just happened in the game of football, in the heat of battle. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that's going to keep giving the ball away. And obviously, you look at the past couple games, he's had some turnovers. I mean, you look back in the Super Bowl. I mean, you heard Chris Collinsworth talk about, hey, this kind of reminds me of the play that happened in the Super Bowl, the only bad play that Jalen Hurts made all day that got returned for a touchdown against the Chiefs. Right. But to me, I'm not that concerned about that. I think that he'll clean that up. And those are just kind of like those freak accidents. I know, obviously, you look at last week and say, well, these freak accidents keep happening. How do we make these freak accidents stop? I think they will. And, obviously, Jalen Hurts is a guy that's going to go watch the tape and correct it. So I think that's just something that happens throughout the game, and they'll continue to improve on that.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. We'll do a little quick look ahead to next week. First, I want to tell everybody about our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds Postgame Live. Geoff Mosher, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor, and those were our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you get a chance to visit them in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. So I don't know if you had sensed it, but it's been a long time coming. That Darius Slay interception in the fourth quarter, Clay, marked kind of the end of a drought for the Eagles, who had not had a takeaway since the Tampa Bay Week 3 game. They had 0 takeaways and 6 giveaways in that. They went from being up like +4 in turnover ratio, which was among the higher in the league, to -1 until they got their first takeaway in several weeks. That was, by the way, that was a huge point in the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, you look at it and you wonder what the Dolphins were doing. A couple of times they were off a little bit on their landmarks. Football's a game. You will drive offensive coordinators crazy. All you do and all the stuff you're drilling and during off season and everything like that, people are like, what could you possibly doing routes on air? You're doing landmarks, okay? You're just getting these landmarks drilled in your head. If it's a 1 high safety, this is your landmark. If it's 2 high safety, this is your landmark. If it's man-to-man, this is your landmark. You got landmarks on the field, and for us as players, your landmark will be, okay, you're top of the numbers, you're bottom of the numbers, you're on the hash. You got to know where you are on the field. And right there, you just saw the Dolphins players they didn't pay attention to their landmarks, and that was able to bring the defender, Slay, who shouldn't even have been in that play. He wasn't the main defender there. He was able to just see the ball and look kind of back at the quarterback. If they're in the correct landmarks, it doesn't happen. So
Right.
kudos to the Eagles that's why people love rerouting. It's not just because, it's a little bit off of timing, but you're getting people off their landmarks. Now it throws the offense off. I mean, there's different levels to this stuff. You're off your landmarks. Now a different defender can peel off and make a play on the ball, and Slay's such a veteran. This guy's all the way out by the wide route there, by the Z receiver, and he's playing inside. Slay's going to look at the quarterback and see that ball and go and pick it off. And he did, and he made a heck of a play on it. And then he's in the middle of the camera saying, "I'm big play Slay. I'm him." But yeah, you're right. He did a good job there.
Well, the funny thing is, it was important because he and Bradbury hadn't played great football for the last few weeks. And they're listen, this team needs these guys to play really good football, not only because they're the starting corners, and in the next few weeks, you're going to go from Washington next week, but then to Dallas, then Kansas City, then San Francisco, but also because they're so banged up in the secondary at safety and nickel that they really need those guys to you can't be, listen, we're going to give up yards under it. We're going to go, we need you guys to not give up yards,
Absolutely. They have to, for those guys with the safeties and nickel problems you have, those guys have to play at a high level for this defense to work. And today, I think they did. They had a nice game, and obviously, I'll say it again, got to check the tape, and we'll talk about that on Wednesday with Greg Cassell on Inside the Tape. But what I saw today was those guys stepped it up. They're playing against, obviously, Tyreek Hill's averaging 130 yards a game. I think that's the most to this point in NFL history for a wide receiver. So to hold him to 80-something yards is actually a win. They did a good job, a nice job of holding the receivers down. I think obviously with the turnover too, look at turnovers. Obviously the Eagles didn't win the turnover battle, but to get that turnover was huge at a point in the game where I think they could have tied it right there, or they came down 7.
That's a good point. I'm trying to remember now at what juncture of the game. It either could, because then the Eagles went up 31-17 on the Gainwell 3-yarder. So it was 24-17.
Huge swing. Turnovers, besides obviously points, is the number one telling statistic in football.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you mentioned that, because you've put a bow on this show perfectly. You're gonna do the show with Greg Cassell Wednesday. It'll come out Thursday morning, 6 a.m. You tell me what you're going to specifically be looking for to watch the All-22 from this game. What are you really curious about?
Well, firstly, I want to see, exactly, what was going on and how they were able to fluster this Dolphins offense. Obviously, the pass rush did a good job, but 2 is usually 2 and out, 2 seconds and gone. So I just want to see coverage wise, what are they doing there? What are the receivers doing? Are they bumping them? You can't really press Tyreek Hill. He's so dang fast. So how are they throwing off that timing to where, just enough to where they were able to start getting to the quarterback? The one game that the Dolphins lost, the Bills were able to get to the quarterback, had 5 sacks. The Eagles had 4 sacks today. So I want to see exactly what they were doing to throw that timing off. And that was what I was worried about coming into the game. And then, offensively, I want to see, for the Eagles, how are they looking up front? It looked like the big boys up front had a big game, how they were moving guys up there and really established the run in that mid-range pass game early. And obviously, got to take a look ahead to, Washington. Obviously, they lost to the Giants today. Sam Howell not looking good. I think he completed like 50% of his passes, got sacked 6 times, but obviously look a little bit at the Commanders there too.
Awesome. Great. We can't wait for that to come out on Thursday, 6 a.m. Clay Harbor, Greg Cassell. It's called Inside the Tape on the Inside the Birds platform. Listen, that's going to wrap it up for this show. I want to thank Jimmy Hyden. Did a great job all day long. He's our producer. He always does a fantastic job. So thanks to him. Thanks to my bookie, Fringe Bar. We had a great time there for the pregame show. PHL Sports Nation, Sky Motor Cars. And thanks to all of you for watching another great episode of Inside the Birds Postgame Live. For Clay Harbor, I'm Geoff Mosher signing off. We will see you next week.